Illusion of microphones.
So no problem.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Wolfel, as some of you may know, and I'm the minority leader of the West Virginia State Senate, and I'm accompanied today by the minority assistant leader, Senator Joey Garcia of Marion County. So what we're going to do today is give you a little bit of an overview of what we expect to try to accomplish this session, working back and forth across the aisle with the majority caucus, the majority party. And at the end, of course, we'd love to take some questions from you. So I'll just go ahead and get started, make a couple of comments about what's going on in Hancock County. Because although the facts are still coming in, it would appear to me as a former prosecutor early in my career that the prosecuting attorney of Hancock County should be conducting a formal investigation of these events. And I'm not accusing anybody of wrongdoing. I'm not saying crimes were committed. However, there certainly is, in my view, a reasonable suspicion or probable cause to believe that crimes may have been committed. So I wanted to begin with that. There needs to be, with local control, also comes local responsibility and accountability. So I would like to see that. And then generally, as far as our goals for the session, a number of our bills haven't popped out yet, but they will in the next 2 or 3 days, we expect. Some of those bills were introduced previously by Senator Garcia and myself, either jointly or separately. Mine focused mainly on our foster care crisis, which has gone on for too many years. We have over 6,000 foster care children that are at risk through no fault of their own, and it's time that the state took seriously their plight. They have no business living in hotels or Airbnbs, and this is a crisis. I call on the Senate President Randy Smith to appoint an ad hoc committee right away to address the crisis of our foster children. It's also an issue that needs to be see an increase in funding for additional CPS workers. The health and safety of the least among us, which are the foster children, should be a primary focus. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and let Joey speak, and then we'll go further. Thank each of you for being here. I'm humbled by the presence of the media today. We are small in number, but we are fairly nimble and active.
Thanks, Mike. I'm Senator Joey Garcia from Marion County, and one of the things we wanted to talk to you guys about is that even though we are in the minority, although we don't set the agenda, we are going to be talking about what we think is important all year. And we're going to be pushing for it. And I know some of the questions we might hear are, well, what can you guys do? And I think we can take the focus not on what's necessarily a Democratic bill. We are not presenting in our priorities today, which I'm going to go through here in a second. These aren't Democratic bills. These are bills that we've heard about from the people in the state of West Virginia when we've listened, when we've read newspaper stories about what's going on, whether it be foster care, when we hear during the kitchen table tour, which was done with the House Democrats, all over the state of West Virginia. We heard not from Republicans, not from Democrats, not from independents. We heard from the people of the state of West Virginia. And I think it's our duty to hold not only, Mike talked about local school boards accountability. It's part of our job is to hold the majority accountable. It's to make sure that when we are talking about ivermectin as one of the first bills of the year, that we say, we could do other things than that, and that's what the people of West Virginia need. So to kind of go briefly over what our platform is, these are the things we are going to be talking about over and over again. The first one is child welfare. And we've got a couple really, I think, good ideas, some which jive with what the governor's talked about. He has a Bring Them Home Fund, which we think is a good start. But we need to invest more money in that. So we're talking about $10 million instead of $6 million, and really emphasizing the idea of nonprofits not building on state facilities, because, and I can talk to you about this afterwards if you want to talk to me about state facilities and what we've done with them with the Department of Health facilities. But the governor's made it very clear he does not want to run facilities in the state of West Virginia. What we need to do is build capacity for shelters, emergency shelters, psychiatric facilities. That's going to come from the people that are already doing that in the state of West Virginia. Another thing that we've heard from people that relates to child poverty and child welfare is the homelessness crisis. Even if people aren't in the foster care system, so many people right now are out of a home, and the federal government is not coming to support the state of West Virginia the way that they used to. So when it comes to Section 8 vouchers, when it comes to just having funds to help people maintain their home, that's part of what we want to set up with the Housing Stabilization Fund, and I think I got the numbers mixed, with $10 million for that, $20 million total for what it would take to provide preventative services for foster care, but then also to provide for that increase in where the gaps are in the system. And we've got a number of other bills. Child welfare does have to be the priority, and it's someplace where the problem's been talked about, the numbers have been talked about. We can make real outcomes. We can actually reduce the number of people in foster care, or if I think right now it's 25 people are in hotels, 25 kids are in hotels, Airbnbs. Let's make that number 0. That's something we can get done right now if we put our heads to it. When it comes to education, public education, we've got a bill that puts a lot of the rent corporations, a lot of things they said we should do with the Hope Scholarship. We're putting that into a bill format to make sure that it's means tested, $100,000 or less for a family. So it's not just going to pay for something that people that have the means to put their kids in private school are already going to do. And also so that funding, to the extent it's not used every year, goes back to public schools, which is facing a huge crisis right now. And then part of that with public education is making sure that teachers and school service personnel have the raises they deserve, that we're competing with Maryland and Pennsylvania and Kentucky and Ohio, and that we raise that $10,000 over 5 years and really 25% for our service personnel over 5 years. And then finally, and I see some of my House Democrat friends in the back, they've talked about over and over, what's the cost of living? How can you make a difference for families? So public utilities, those costs have gone up, and we hear about it everywhere. That may be the biggest cry we're hearing from the state of West Virginia. So we talked about a moratorium here, but not just freezing it for the sake of freezing it, but studying the issue. And then the reform, and this is a bill that Senator Woelfel has, is the idea of elections, holding our PSC commissioners accountable and making sure that we have that trust there for one of the biggest issues that's coming up. So that's really what we're going to be talking about along with the school aid formula too with education over and over and over again this year. And we ask that the House, the Senate, we think we can work together. There are other bills that I've heard today that Senator Takubo has a pay raise bill. Senator Chapman has a PSC moratorium bill like ours. There are ways that we can work together, but we have to get away from the divisive, stupid stuff. I don't know if that's quotable enough for you guys, but that's all I have.
All right, I'm just going to add a little bit more to that on the utility issue. We have the highest water bills in America, our residential bills. When you look at our household incomes in West Virginia, we have the highest utility rates. And they're rising daily. I mean, the Public Service Commission has no accountability. They aren't elected. Really, not a lot of transparency either. So I have a bill that would elect them and have them accountable to the people of the state, because utility bills are crushing our seniors, our young couples, our single mothers, our young families, and there's no end in sight. So with that, we'll be glad to answer any questions. Let's go.
Speaking of utilities, Republicans have talked about increasing coal as well as data centers. Will this help or hurt the problem as far as utility rates?
Well, I'll answer that and then I'll turn it over. First of all, these coal bills need to be looked at with scrutiny. I'm a coal advocate. I appreciate all our coal people do, our coal miners especially, but some of these bills do nothing but subsidize coal at the expense, and that cost has got to be borne somewhere in the system, and it's going to be in elevated utility bills for our citizens. So you can't pick winners and losers there. The losers being our people in terms of higher utility bills. And to take a severance tax off coal at this point, I can't understand where we've raised the revenue to substitute for that when we have so many other needs. And by the way, public education, follow up, I think at this point you're going to see about $145 million hole created by the county's inability to take care of and educate our special needs students. Yes, the Hope Scholarship has its advocates and it has its pluses. However, those students do not migrate over to the schools that take the Hope Scholarship. Therefore, those children are remaining in the public school system. And you think Hancock County is the only county that's upside down? Every county is going to be qualifying for this special money that apparently the House is wants us to appropriate. Okay, let's go ahead and other questions. Joe, your turn.
This is for either of you. So I see that you want to increase the child welfare funding by $20 million. The governor's budget is asking for an increase of $10 million. How did you arrive at $20 million, and is the state in a healthy financial shape to be able to deliver more money into the system? Where would you see those funds coming from, essentially?
So part of what we've done, and probably should have had more of a math problem up here, or at least showed our work, what we've put together between $20 million, $10 million, and then the raises is really about that $125 million that the governor wants to do with the tax decrease. And so we think that this adds up, that there's money in the system that they're saying, okay, we can just go ahead and have this 5% tax decrease. Well, the money can go for a lot of things that are going to solve problems in the state of West Virginia. When it comes specifically to the child welfare money, we've looked at, instead of $6 million, $10 million to go into a fund that really looks at gaps in the system. And again, that would be, we've heard about the need for an emergency shelter, for example, in different parts of the state for children. We've heard about the need to bring kids back home and not having certain services. So we have a bill that would set up a advisory council for Secretary Mayor to say, where are these gaps? And then have $10 million to fund that. The other $10 million, we're looking at a number of preventative services and services like CASA, for example, like the family treatment courts, $1.4 million, which the court has asked for. So there's a number of things there that we think are important. And then kind of to dive into the $10 million for housing stability, one of the issues that I keep hearing over and over again are nonprofits are strapped for cash. And so, and you get Section 8 vouchers that come from the federal government, which require a third of the amount of rent to be paid by the family, the people. And the other amount, those just aren't existing anymore. There's not new ones. So we need to figure out what our values are in the state of West Virginia. We need to actually I think, supplement that. And one of the things that we do, the reason why we put it under child welfare is that that fund will go towards families with children and also foster kids that are aging out of the system. Those are two groups of people that maybe don't have as much focus. And we think if we have $5 million going to those vouchers, $5 million going to a fund that would say, hey, can we pay your utility costs? Can we pay your rent for the month? That can potentially, maybe you can house 1,000 people. Maybe it can keep people from being unhoused. So we think those numbers work. We don't think those are puffery or just imaginative. And we think it's something we can really do.
Next question.
Senator Wolfel kind of already touched on this, the consolidation of schools and the lack of funding. Is there something we can do to help that? Is tweaking the school formula helping that? Is getting rid of the Hope Scholarship the answer? What is the answer?
Well, we're not going to be getting rid of the Hope Scholarship, and in fact, it's going to grow. We know that. The school aid formula needs adjustment, and it needs adjustment for a variety of reasons, but the one I'd like to highlight today is special needs students and the extended cost that goes along with that to each county. Again, Cabell County, I know, and Wayne County, I've talked to each superintendent, they're going to be upside down in their budgets because of the declining student enrollment, and there are a lot of reasons for that. But the state is going to need to step up, and I haven't heard anything about that from the majority caucus. Anybody else?
Brad, see if we did.
Brad?
I have one that maybe dovetails nicely with that one, which is about the first bill that came out of the House. You referenced it first thing. It's an emergency fund for financially strapped county boards of education. The House passed it in one day. The Senate approach seems to be much more deliberative. Do you think that there are aspects of that bill that need to be considered, just to be cautious?
Yeah, I'd like to know how those folks are still on the school board that allowed that to happen. So I would want to build a safeguard into that to make sure that if board members allow outrageous conditions to occur that they know will fail, they don't need to be on the school board anymore. So I have many questions about that. I think the Senate will be deliberative and answer before we run a bill out of here.
Actually, let me ask a follow-up to that question, because in regards to school board members, there's already a process for removing any elected official in this state. Can a new law override the process that is used for removing elected officials currently that already exists? There's already an effort to remove those board members if a county prosecutor sure would want to go that route.
That's a great question. I'll just say this, out of good conscience, they shouldn't be on there, but your point is well taken, that the impeachment process orchestrated and motivated by the prosecutor, if they were so motivated, that I don't think we'd have the ability to change that. It's a great point. Thanks for clearing that up.
Now I want to ask my real question.
All right.
The end of the session last year kind of ended in an ugly note where really your voices were kind of blocked out at the very end there. Going into this session, talking with obviously your colleagues in the supermajority, I mean, has there been any conversation about at least making sure that while obviously you're just two people, but that your voices are being heard and that they're being fair to the things that you all need to say in regards to procedural issues?
Well, I mean, if you're talking about the DEI bill at the end of the year, I can only sue so many people in the off season. That's an inside joke. No, I think that was wrong. I don't know that I've gotten a chance to speak about it. I'm a little bit more clear-minded than I was that night. But there was something that was wrong with the process, and the problem, and sometimes the problem that we have seen the last couple of years with the supermajority, is this idea that they can do whatever they want, regardless of what the opposition is. Starting over a new year, and I think we've had good conversations with Senate President Randy Smith. I mean, I had one this morning where he said, let us know what you need. I think there's a difference sometimes from what you see in moments like that with the normal working conditions. And I see some of my colleagues that are walking by right now. We can work together on issues, and I think especially the two of us, if anybody knows how we work, we do not try to put partisanship above the final product. We're going to continue to do that. They will act however they act, but we're here to represent, again, the people of the state of West Virginia without an RD or I in front of the name.
Next question?
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about division on the Republican side of the Senate, not necessarily having an agenda set forth. Do you guys have a comment on that, on what you'd like to see from that side of the aisle?
Yeah, I thought that was a cheap shot when a senator got in front of the media and said there was no agenda by the supermajority. You could interview each of the Republican senators. I'm quite sure they're focused on the session, quite sure they have their own priorities, and collectively, yes, there may be some factions, but I think we'll see an agenda emerge. I hope that we're going to be friendly to the citizens of our state and not focus on what's best, to be candid, with the donor class, with the high earners, okay? The tax cut, there's no way in this climate we can afford a tax cut, in my view. And I think that view is shared by many of the Republicans in the Senate. So I don't think I'm in a minority on that. But I think the Senate President has come in and expressed to me an agenda. It's a matter of us having conversations with them. We want to look out for these homeless kids that are just floating around, not being educated. We want to make sure everybody's got a meal over the summer, okay? Those are 2 bills that I have that died in the House last year, to identify these children that are not supported by food over the summer vacation or Christmas in some of our areas. So we can find common ground with the supermajority. We have in the past, I believe we will again, if that answers your question.
On the tax cut, is it your position that the state not only cannot afford the 10% that the governor described verbally, but also the 5% that he budgeted for?
Go ahead.
I mean, I think that's a big part of what kind of our thought process on that is. These are the things we could use that money for. That's $125 million. I think it's kind of funny that they said it's a 10% increase, and then they go up to the Senate Finance Committee, House Finance Committee, and they're like, "Oh, we really want to work for that. It was aspirational." Didn't sound aspirational, and I think that means it's going to be harder for them to even get something like that passed. But yes, I think to answer your question, there are parts of state government that are not working. There are issues that we see that are not being resolved. Sometimes you hear money can't solve everything. Money can do something if it's spent right. And again, when you look at Hancock or other things, there has to be accountability measures. But we think these are ways that we can work with the governor's office to get better outcomes. And we're going to keep moving for that.
Yeah, let me add that about the governor. I feel like this governor is a hard worker, is a bright guy. And I believe he cares about these issues concerning child welfare, other issues, and foster care. So we'll see. We want to work with him along with the leadership of the Senate.
You proposed a 3% pay raise for public employees average. Is that the right amount?
Our thoughts would be, again, not just looking at this year, but over the 5-year period, you got to have a plan for how it's going to improve people's lives, and not just say, well, willy-nilly, we're going to do, I think it's what, $1,750 this year is what that pay raise means, and I think $600 to $800 for service personnel. So that's what he's doing. Our plan is really to do more, but to say we're going to build it in the code that next year there's going to be one. The following year, and I think it's pretty easy to explain and to communicate that 2000, let's get everybody above 50,000. And let's make sure that we are trying to keep the best and brightest of the teachers that we have right now. And there's so many bills that we see in the Education Committee, I feel, that it's just, there's a lack of respect. That's one way we could show that we value what they do and we want you to stay and teach our kids, which is one of the most important things you can.
Anyone else?
Get out while we can.
Okay, thank you all for coming. It means a lot. We're glad to have this event. We'll do it again and appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Thank you.